I don't try to be obsessive about too many things in life. I tend to consider myself rather easygoing. But if there's one thing that I am absolutely obsessive about, and my wife will confirm this, though she may say that there were other things on that obsessive list, she knows I'm obsessive about passports. I always make sure that our passports are up to date. I am always checking them. I worry that there are some countries that I will probably never go to, but that you cannot travel there if your passport is within 6 months of expiration. So our passports, all 5 of our passports, are always renewed months in advance of even the 6-month deadline. There's something about a passport that I think is amazing. There's a certain romantic notion to it. It's powerful. It's freeing. Perhaps it goes back to the first passport that my father got me in 1980 in preparation for a trip to China, which is the country of his birth. Perhaps it was the awe and the importance that I heard in his voice, the pride that he had in being an American citizen, not by birth, but by choice. When he handed me my passport and said, "This is the most powerful document in the world." Of course, there's a level of exaggeration with a statement like that. But when you're 10 years old and your dad says something is serious, you think it's serious. And you take it seriously. This ability to grab it and go anywhere that you want. So where have you been? What's stamped in your passport? No, I don't ask this question to encourage a sense of insecurity or braggadocio. I'm talking as much about a symbolic or faith passport as I am about a literal physical passport and all the places that you've been. I haven't been that many places, actually. I'm not looking for a list of all the amazing places you visited, for even a well-traveled person can have the most provincial of worldviews. So, how big is your world? Where have you traveled? What have you seen? Where do you hope to go? And it's not about how far you've traveled from home. My mother's side of the family is from farm families. My grandmother was the big city girl with a population that topped out at a whopping 900 people. It was my grandfather who was the farm mouse, the country kid. These are the kind of people who may never go 100 or 200 miles away from home, but they're wise people who understand the world because they're trained to pay attention. There are very few people in the world who pay attention to the world the way farm folk do. How big is your world? What's its size, its dimensions? Is it your school? Is it your town? Is it the valley? Is it your family? Is it your friends? Who lives in it? Who do you know? Who do you care for? Who are its citizens? Who are its outcasts? I know that the world can seem too big these days, so much so that it's very overwhelming. We have access to so much information all the time. Turn off the TV. Turn off my news feed. Make my internet connection go away, just for a little while, but make it go away. The world is too much with us, to quote Wordsworth. I need the world actually to be a little less with me. Sometimes trying to orient ourselves is like seeing that little red "You Are Here" star on the map of a huge mall. And then you try and orient yourself to where you are, eventually making a best guess and starting heading in what you think is the right direction, only to get distracted at the first Rocky Mountain Chocolate Factory kiosk and end up with a dozen milk chocolate almond bears and no recollection of why you came to the mall in the first place. Okay, so I'm not the only one with it that's happened to. It's no laughing matter, though, that in the very funny book by Douglas Adams called The Hitchhiker's Guide to the Galaxy, that one of the alien races uses the total perspective vortex as an execution device. It's a device that when you're inside it, it displays a model of the entire universe, together with a microscopic dot bearing the legend, "You are here." People go mad by seeing the sheer insignificance of their place in the universe. I think we can often feel the same. Even the most stalwart activist or optimist can either get overwhelmed or desensitized by the weight of it all. It's easy to go into fortress mode and we circle the wagons. And so the question is, how do we be in the world? How do we act in the world when there's so much world to be in and to act in? Especially a world that seems in so many ways and so many forms to be one that wants to do us harm, and so is actually best left alone as much as possible. Paul's letters contain the oldest manuscripts in the New Testament. His first letter to the Thessalonians is the oldest piece of writing in the New Testament, written somewhere between 50 and 60 CE, years before any of the Gospels were written, with the oldest Gospel, the Gospel of Mark, being dated somewhere between 60 and 85 CE. His letters are the source of theology, history, foundational documents in the development of the early church that still affect us today. And his letter to the Romans, from which we heard today, which is also dated around 60 CE, it stands as Paul's tour de force of his writing. Now, Paul was about as well-traveled as you could get. His missionary journeys took him across the whole of the eastern Mediterranean basin, back and forth and back and forth. From Italy to what is now Syria, all across all of Asia Minor, he spread both encouragement and admonition to those early fledgling, struggling congregations. He saw a big chunk of what he knew the world to be, of what his culture knew the world to be, though we know that there is and was much more out there than Paul ever could have fathomed. So our passage for this morning, Romans 12, is the beginning of a significant shift in tone in Paul's letter. Up until Romans 11, Paul struggles. He's got this lengthy internal debate about the salvation and the relationship between Jew and Gentile. And then there's this shift. And your summary, I could have sat down. Your summary was perfect of this passage from Romans. That first part is about the transformation of who we're supposed to be. That second half, how that transformation is supposed to be manifest in the world. More than anything else, Romans 12 is a call for preparation and action. As Christians, we need to figure out how to make our way in the world, whether that's the communities here along Highway 82, or how we engage with a larger world that we may never see, but that spiritually we believe that we are connected to and obliged to. So where are we going? What is our place in this world as people of God? For me, a lot matters when it comes to the use of language. I taught English literature for 6 years, and I learned there more than any place else that words count. So 2 things to consider with words that I want to both rethink and recapture. First thing is that I want to rethink the concept of the church as a home. It's an easy and well-used and common metaphor. I pastored churches for 8 years, so I'm familiar with this idea of asking people to make this place your church home. And you know the question, so which one is your church? Oh, it's the one on the corner. Who is your pastor? We ask people to find a church home, to make church home. And it's a comforting and important thought. But I think then for a moment with this church, with its motto, live the adventure. I think churches in this world need to be outposts as much as homes. These need to be not just the place where you come and people know you, but they're the places where you get equipped and re-equipped, where you meet with fellow travelers on their own paths, at a place where paths meet. When we hear the adventures of other pilgrims on their journeys. And then we go back into the world, checking in, getting resupplied here at this outpost. Not just a home for family, but as an outpost where we meet fellow travelers on the journeys of faith, because you are not meant to stay here. The second thing is I want to reclaim the idea that we are not tourists in the world, we are pilgrims. We aren't here to sightsee. We are on spiritual journeys, and we need to be fellow travelers and companions to one another. No single one of us is on the same path. But we are led by a common Savior who has said two things. First said, "Follow me," and then said, "Go." One of my favorite quotes is from Wendell Berry, the author who wrote the novel Jayber Crow. If you could do it, I suppose, as he's talking about his spiritual journey in this small town where he is a barber, it would be a good idea to live your life in a straight line, starting, say, in the dark wood of error and proceeding by logical steps through hell and purgatory and into heaven. Or you could take the King's Highway past the appropriately named dangers, toils, and snares, and finally cross the river of death and enter the celestial city. But that is not the way I have done it so far. I'm a pilgrim, but my pilgrimage has been wandering and unmarked. Often what has looked like a straight line to me has been a circling or a doubling back. I have been in the dark wood of error any number of times. I have known something of hell, purgatory, and heaven, but not always in that order. The names of many snares and dangers have been made known to me, but I have seen them only looking back. Often I have not known where I was going until I was already there. I have had my share of desires and goals, but my life has come to me, or I have gone to it mainly by ways of mistakes and surprises. Often I have received better than I deserved. Often my fairest hopes have rested on bad mistakes. I am an ignorant pilgrim crossing a dark valley, and yet for a long time looking back, I have been unable to shake off the feeling that I have been led. Make of that what you will. So it doesn't matter where you live. A larger world is a matter of heart and soul and curiosity about other people and a sense of fearlessness. It's a matter of finding ourselves in the world by finding Christ in the world, the one who both sends and leads, who both goes before us and walks with us. I have been unable to shake off the feeling that I have been led. Make of that what you will. Let us pray.